if one of the most powerful things you could do for your well-being this week was so simple and so obvious that you've already talked yourself out of it? No kit, no app, no technique to master, just you, outside, shoes optional. Welcome back to Exploring Ways to Wellness. I'm Sarah Gorev, and this week I'm joined by the wonderful Annie, photographer, nature lover, and someone who's essentially been forest bathing since she was 10 years old in Cumbria, long before it had a name. Fair warning, neither of us are experts. This is genuinely two people who love being outside, having a proper chat about why it makes us feel so much better. But we cover more ground than you might expect, from why trees talk to each other through their roots, to what owl pellets have to do with wellness, to the women's business walking group where no one talks about business once. There's also a plant in the wrong place that I think you'll enjoy. If you've been meaning to get outside more but somehow haven't quite managed it, or love spending your time in the garden or outside, this one's for everyone. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to Exploring Ways to Wellness. I am absolutely thrilled to have Annie with me this week to talk about forest bathing. Thank you for joining us, Annie.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Neither of us are experts, so this will be a fascinating chat for everyone.
Thank you so much. Honestly, as you say, I cannot even pronounce the word of Japanese forest bathing, but it's a lovely walk in the woods, basically. And you brought me here to talk about very personal way I sort of enjoy nature. I enjoy going out into the forests and having a walk and absorbing all that. And I love my gardening, and that helps my well-being. And it's something I've always enjoyed. But now it's so sweet that it's like a label sort of being put on things. I think it's actually, the Japanese forest bathing was only officially recognized in the 1980s.
Yes, that's what I read as well.
Yeah.
So it's the shinrin-yoku, I think, is
Wow.
the closest I can get. I apologize for anyone who speaks Japanese out there. I'm just going on the UK spelling that they've sort of translated it. But yes, I believe it's relatively new term that was started in the 80s.
But don't you think, being out in nature, this is primeval? This is like going back to our core of why, civilization almost, or before pre-civilization, but just being outside, being part of nature, appreciating nature, just resets your brain a little bit. I think it just really, I absorb it all, and I really enjoy the whole atmosphere and the smells and the sounds. And this is a very personal take. Everybody's different. I know that one, but now it's so lovely. It's all been recognized, don't you think? Like even medically.
Yes, definitely. And as you say, we'll come on to it, but there's various research studies being done on the impact of forest bathing on your physiology and your mental well-being. But actually, when you delve into it, a lot of it, you think, isn't that obvious?
Yes.
And you think,
it isn't walk in the woods. It's just lovely, literally, which means a nice, easy thing to do.
Yeah, but you think, well, if it's so obvious that being in nature makes us feel better, then why do we
have to prescribe it? But do you not think that civilization, or society, especially now in the digital age, we've lost a connection a little bit? Connection. We're sitting in front of screens. We're talking to people online, which we're doing now, which is still lovely conversation. But we really have, parts of city areas and everything that, they're trying to put the greenness back into it. They're trying to really just put trees in there. Just people appreciate what's out there. And you can get very isolated if you're in a tower block or bits and pieces. It's a stress to get out and everything. But you can really be disassociated to the point where you don't know where your food comes from, you don't get the daylight, you don't get the smells, and it's really sad. And I think now to physically have to say, get out there and do, enjoy it all. And you don't have to do it. I'm no hiker. This is a very personal thing. I was very lucky to be brought up in North Cumbria, very on the Salt Lake coast, small holding, middle of nowhere, lots of very useless animals running around that never made it to the freezer. But we used to play in the woods, and it was just joyous, and it was just what you did. And I like my garden. I realized I've just been thinking about this. I made a garden in the woods, and it's hilarious. We had a big garden, but I had my garden in the woods, and I used to do,
Oh, that's so lovely.
yeah, I
As a
used to just
child.
like pinch plants and put them in and everything, and they used to die in bits and pieces. But it was just such good fun, obviously with my sister and friends, But this, we were only about 10. You would never let kids walk around. My mum would know where we were for 2 hours, but it was.
Yeah.
But the woods was only 100 yards away. But it was really idyllic and a nice thing to have that connection and sit there and listen to the birds and realize what's happening around you and being aware. So I was very lucky to have that situation. I really enjoyed being outside. And then we used to do lots of lovely walks, the back fields, which is none of our fields. But so it wasn't as if I'm from Cumbria and I was, trying to get up Scarfell and do the amazing hill climbing. It was just being outside and having the walks and talks with our family, especially my lovely stepfather. He would just go out and we'd have a wander, like a good old hour, as like a kid, a child of 10 years old going out for an hour in the freezing, absolutely freezing times, horizontal rain, we used to call it. But then we also have good chats, and I learned a conversation. I learned how to talk with people. We talk about, there's a barn there, and they had a barn owl, and I used to pick up the pellets. A barn owl regurgitates what's left of a mouse. So I would just pick those up, pop them in my pocket, and then go and put them in water and dissolve them all and find the little jawbones and just.
Oh, wow. That appreciation of nature is just absolutely beautiful.
There wasn't much else to do in Cumbria. We were very isolated.
Your experience with forest bathing was right back from childhood and before it even had the label forest bathing.
Yeah, we used to have, we sit in the brightest part of the forest, and my sister, and the sun would come through and we'd make a little garden, or we'd have little dens and things, and we're just all chattering along and with the kids down the road, and it was just really nice. Obviously we had the scraps and fell out as well, but just being outside and making your own decisions and doing your own things and creating things. And I just still go back to that now. I'm how lovely, it's not a huge garden, but I enjoyed that. And just to get out, I go to Cumbria a lot, and just to have the walk in the back fields, a walk and a talk, just precious, absolutely precious. And now it's just, and it's quite sad that not everybody can do it, but people who can do it don't do it as well. I think that's why they're trying to elevate awareness, and people really are aware now of the benefits of well-being and getting outside, but people don't always practice it, do they?
No.
It's a very simple way, because doctors prescribe, especially in Japan, forest bathing, which means just get yourself out there, go and immerse yourself, just keep walking, think about something else. And not, obviously I'm not saying don't take antidepressants or anything, but sometimes it goes along with medical intervention as well, just having that time. And I think I saw the National Trust, they have forest bathing courses, so you can actually go and prescribe yourself and pay to go for a walk in the woods. But people do it. It's just so lovely, and it's it's not a competition, and it's not really flinging yourself through there and seeing how many birds you can. People do the competitive bird watching. How many birds do you see? It's just immersing yourself in the vibes. And I don't listen to music or anything when I'm walking around, which you can obviously, but it's the smells and the sounds of the nature and the birds, and just it's very difficult sometimes, very rare to not hear anything as well sometimes. Like in modern life there's always music happening, but when I'm gardening or something, I don't put the radio on. I just listen to what's around me. We're in quite suburbia, so we do hear kids playing, but you hear the pigeons scrapping, and you hear birds, and then you hear the cats, and then you can smell the grass, and it's just joyous. And it just put me in, I think it's called a state of flow. When you don't think about anything else apart from what you're doing. That's why I say I enjoy the gardening, just planting things and digging. But that state of flow is when you are not pressured by anything else apart from the task in hand. It's just, and that's a really creative state to be in as well. And I get a lot of lovely ideas for my photography, and for my, just through the light, and through just things come in from your back of your brain, for want of a better word, because there's nothing else stopping it come through.
Yes, you're giving it space, aren't you, to these ideas to come in. And
I find it really cathartic, and I do realize, to the point, I've got a little notebook in my conservatory, that if I like I'm digging and gardening or doing something, and I like doing little personal projects. And if I think of something, I'll write it down in a notebook because it'll go in a minute. But I've got some really lovely ideas that I don't obviously absorb the idea from a different point, but then that mindfulness, being outside, and lack of intervention from the modern life, whatever that means, that enables these things to come through, I find. So
Yeah. Well, in fact, I think one of the reasons why it became popular in the 80s in Japan, or that the name for it was coined, was, I believe it was in response to that suddenly, the economic growth causing so much stress in Japan, all of this technology, all the sudden fast pace of life. And it was looking almost for an antidote to that.
Yeah, that really makes sense to the 80s. Industrialization, people losing the connection with nature again.
Yes. Yeah. So that sort of, as you say, the mindfulness, the stepping back into nature, it's just such a great opportunity for your body to calm down, for your mind to calm down, and that can give it space for creativity, and I believe it brings down your blood pressure and breathing, and it can have such a massive impact on your well-being.
Yeah. I'm quite a positive person. I'm accused of having rose tinted glasses. I think that's definitely my attitude, but everybody needs a bit of help. You can't be so happy all the time. And sometimes, lots of things happen. I just need to get out for a walk. I just need to go out and get some space in my head and get some space around me. And then a lot of people through COVID, when they got the dogs, because they needed to get out, but people would just need an excuse to get out, which I think is a bit sad. But a lot of dogs were bought, and a lot of expensive dogs were bought. But I'm always like, get a rescue and all of this. But a lot of people got the dogs so they could go out and avoid people maybe, but just go out and just be by themselves, or be with the dog and be outside in nature and release a little bit of that stress and try and find time for themselves, really.
Yeah. Interesting that you were saying about being quiet. So not necessarily having music on or something like that. And I think they do recommend that it is in silence, even if you go for a walk through the woods or through the forest with somebody, just to be quiet so that you can get yourself into that mindful state of being aware with all senses of what's going on around you.
Well, we used to do the walk when I was growing up, but then you just have to be quiet because then you didn't want to scare the wildlife. You know what I mean? So that was part of it. So we'd have a nice little chat, but then you get next to the woods and be, the barn owls would be sleeping through the day, and and then so you just be like, something's out there. Unfortunately, there's not as much wildlife around as there was all those years ago. But then to be quiet, to teach your child to be quiet for a while, and to have a conversation, and a two-way conversation, nothing deep or anything, but to listen. That was like such a therapy. And it was like, but I didn't know it was. And then it wasn't until I got older and I went to university and I was in the city and everything, and I didn't realize that everybody didn't have that. And people didn't know what to do in a walk, not what to do. Everybody can do anything they fancy, but just have that space and respect for what's around you and who's around you. And it's like, it's not a competition. You don't have to do this. You don't have to talk every second that you're out there, but it's just, I think it's called retrofitting it. People now have done all these things, but now they've got labels and everything.
Yes. And I think we're more conscious of them, aren't we? When we've lost things, we're more conscious of. So as you say, when you're in the city, then you can become conscious of the fact that you enjoyed being in those green spaces, connecting with nature.
I think more planning is happening now. More green spaces are hopefully being preserved and created, and it's good. And another thing I was thinking about as well is putting a label on something is grounding. Basically that is something I do all the time, but now it has a name. Is basically going out in your garden with your bare feet, just having a wander on the grass, or with no shoes on. And now I'm thinking, well, what else would you do? I always go out, and even before this chat, I thought, we'll have a little wander around the garden. I realised, and it was wet, but I still took my shoes off because it's nice. It's a nice thing. You have to avoid the pigeon poo, but it's like, it's still lovely. I don't know. It is that feeling. It's literally being connected, and your body's feeling it and touching it. And there's so many ways now, I think, that we've been pulled back from it. And I think it's going full circle. But I didn't realize it. I was listening this is only about last year that I heard the word grounding. And a lovely person I know, she said, oh, we do grounding together. And I was thinking, oh, wow, that sounds. She goes, yeah, we go out in the wild, in the woods or in the garden, and we just, take our shoes off. I was like, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Not to be condescending, but it's just, it's so lovely that people have to be told to do something really, not told, but, have to be made aware that is a nice thing to do.
I do find that really interesting that we've sort of got to a point where we've sort of, I don't know whether it's too easy. And therefore we're like, well, how would that work if it's something relatively easy? Everything has to be so complicated. Or whether there's the time thing, and if we find it really easy to put so many excuses in place to say, well, how can I go out into the garden? It's too cold, it's too wet, it's too, I haven't got the right.
I think it's a change of state. Basically, that's why people at the end of the day, you have a little drink, because that's like you've finished your work, so you have this, and it's like clicks the brain, and now I'm resting. So that's like been proven. So if you have a alcoholic drink, or you have like a cup of tea or something like that, it's changed at a certain time. That's change of state of mind. Whereas if you go outside even for 10 minutes and you're walking around and outside and you're getting rained on and you've got bare feet, that clicks your mind.
Yes,
the change of state, which sort of helps you realize that maybe it was too intense what you were doing before. If you're in front of the screen, I love what I do, but I spend a lot of time editing in front of screens. But I have to get out. I go out every hour, just wander out and go and pull a weed up. Oh, there's no such thing as weeds, just a flower plant in the wrong place. But
oh, I love that. I love that reframe. A plant in the wrong place. Don't we all feel like that sometimes?
Well, according to your perception,
Yes.
But just having that, if I'm finding I'm working and it's a bit intense and I'm not getting any answers, people stand back. But it's just a way of standing back that physically makes me feel different. And there's something said about the microbes. If you have soil under your skin, it really triggers something inside your body because the microbes in it.
Something chemically there, isn't there, about the smells that are released, that sensory touch of getting your hands in the soil.
This is why I love forest schools for children, because I realised that so many kids, well, primeval, you weren't sitting with a desk in rows for most, education time. If you were outside, you were doing things, and people's, kids' state of mind and their flow, they're more inquisitive. And, at the school here, my children, they had like a fire pit. They're only 7 and they're sitting around a fire pit. And I was like, health and safety alarms going off, but it was great because I just did forest school for an afternoon. And my son absolutely loved it. It really did. And just, you weren't, they were doing maths while counting, how many bugs you could find or how many pebbles. And they were reading things on the labels for the seeds. But being outside and doing something instead of somebody, obviously education's amazing, you need it. But then there's always to be outside. I just triggered something and he was more relaxed with it. He just loved his Wednesday afternoons.
Yeah, I find that quite interesting. So you and I are based in the UK, obviously. So for people that are elsewhere, forest schools have sort of grown up since the 90s sort of time. There's more and more of them around. And it's quite interesting because if you look into a lot of forest schools, they talk about the activities being so lovely, connecting with nature. And as you say, that mixture of sort of education and nature. But I think there is an element there that you've touched on that's really important. It's just being in that environment is calming and is more sort of relaxing. Although they could be, climbing something or whatever. So they can have a physical experience as well. But I think it's that sort of parasympathetic response, isn't it? That gives them it's that creativity that's coming in and that ability to relax and to take a breath and to,
all weathers, absolutely.
The nurseries.
3-year-olds, you'd have to take a map. And no matter what the weather, they said there's no way they are going outside. It could be like
lovely. Let's go jump in the puddles in wellies and go through the mud and
but there's always usually, they're just like screaming around. There's always a little bit of a purpose to it. They're building something or making something or just going through. But just is, there's enough time in education when sitting behind a desk and we're looking at a screen now, you know what I mean? So it is, I think that's a really positive thing as well. And that only came in, well, that's only been going around here for about the last 15 years. So
yes,
it just, because that, education, there's so many different ways you can help a child and educate a child, and it's tapping into what works for them sometimes. Some people just love being in front of the screen, but I personally would have loved being outside learning, but I never had that opportunity. It was never a thing when I was growing up.
Yeah. I do find it interesting because obviously we used to go on forest walks and things with the kids when they were young, and I absolutely loved it. And I don't know why, but I always sort of thought, oh, well, where's the educational? Sometimes where's the education in this? And I'd have them sort of close their eyes and say to them, what can you hear? What can you smell? What sensation on your skin? All of these kinds of things. And sort of said, like, remember this. So when you're doing your creative writing and things like that, then, maybe you could set a story in a word and then you'd be able to describe it and that kind of thing. But it was all sort of that consciously being aware of certain things. And then I was a governor at a local primary school, and we went on a school trip into a forest. And a lot of the children had never been out of the town.
Yeah, it's really...
And it was fascinating for me because I thought that those were the things that they were going to try and that they would notice. So, the colours maybe or things like that.
Wildlife or whatever's around.
Yeah, exactly. Or things that as an adult we maybe zone in on. And actually it was really fascinating for me. So they were noticing the way, and you would connect with this because of the light, you're appreciating light, but how sunlight would come through different leaves.
Oh, wow.
And how fast a squirrel would run up a tree versus different types of birds flying around, or how firm the ground is if it has moss on it versus if it has the roots on. Those sorts of things. And it really brought back that sort of that magic and that curiosity,
the wonder
of the natural world that through a child's eyes I just thought was so beautiful. And I can miss that.
Absolutely precious. And how apt. Sir David Attenborough's 100th, was it?
Yes, it was this last week. Yes.
Yeah, on the 8th. And he has always wanted to, he got into this because he said the reason he was always done this, he always has the perception and curiosity of a child. He never lost it. He said you get to a certain point, the teens and everything a little bit shuts down. Well, it has to. You've got to, be an adult and get on with things. But that sense of wonder, and that's what he wanted to bring to everybody. And he just was so good. And he said he would always gravitate to a child that was in a room with him, and then he would ask them questions and they would ask back. So he just wanted to keep the wonder and keep his curiosity going. And I think it was rare for him, he said, because he knew lots of people had lost it, including lots of his family members and things. But he said he always retained that, and he just wanted to share it with everybody. And I remember now, it's just when I was at primary school, I won a drawing competition and I got a book token, and that was the very first book I bought was Life on Earth, and that was the first one. And that was just, nobody told me that. I just knew that it was a lovely thing. It'd been on TV, and that's my first book. But he just wanted to share his love of nature and everything.
And he really does pass on that passion for it, doesn't he?
But that's why it gives you hope that people do recognize now how precious it is. And he was saying about how much of the natural world has been lost, and don't get me started about fossil fuels and things, but that there is a little bit of a turning point, because there has to be, I think, to just keep the world in one piece. I've jumped onto walking, from conversation saying how great it is to walk through a forest, but then you've got to keep the forest.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to keep the forest. And also, a lot of people are now a long way from a forest. So as you alluded to earlier, that it's finding those green spaces. So it might not be, this beautiful ancient forest of oaks. You can still get huge benefit of finding other spaces. In fact, I think I was reading about in Finland, they'd done again some research and had found that people spending time in a city park were calmer and more relaxed than people who were in a city centre. And again, it's sort of that, oh yeah, well, that's obvious. But then surely it should be promoted that more people actually have time in their lunchtime or whatever, or prioritize it as a reset, as a sort of calming.
Sitting there on the benches having the sandwiches or on the little Tupperware boxes, but at least they're outside,
Yes.
So
yeah.
I work in basically the communications department of the NHS sometimes. I photograph doctors and consultants there for their websites. But one of the places we use, it's next to an open space, and you can, these are lovely, amazing people working in NHS, and they're inside all the time, doing amazing jobs and on screens and working in stressful situations. And then you can see through, there's waves of everybody come to sit outside. They have a really good place there for everybody to sit outside for there. You can see people, like it's all windows, and I'm just doing my photography, but you can see people just sitting on the bench going like that. And bless their hearts, maybe that's the only half hour they've got outside for 8 hours. And I can see, and when I work there occasionally, you can see the same people at the same spots, and they come out just do that. But you can see physically going, just to be outside, and that reset them, have a little bit of lunch, get some fresh air, because the word fresh air is really, it's high oxygen, and you do need better oxygen, not the air that's sometimes filtered and taken around so many departments and office spaces. It triggers your brain, it lifts you, I think. So
yeah, definitely. And I mentioned when you first came on the beautiful peace lily behind you, but again, it's like even inside our houses, it's not the same. Again, we're not comparing it to being in a forest, but it has a benefit to you of having those green, the house plants around you.
Strange enough, I watch Gardener's World. Really weird, that, isn't it? Much to the eye roll of all my family, but there's basically the houseplant situation now. They're just exploded. It used to be 1970s. You used to have the spider plant coming down, but that vibe now, having beautiful houseplants around you, that is just exploded. There's just whole show. There's going to be in Chelsea. There's the whole exhibitions about houseplants and interior plants and how it can help you mentally.
Fantastic.
Even if you're just like on a balcony, you can have a little. I'm very fortunate. I've got not a huge garden, but I've got a nice sized garden. But if you've even got a balcony, you can grow tomatoes. The smell of a tomato plant is just lush. And so, if you care and look out and watch something grow, that helps your mental health even, because it's creative, because you plant a few flowers and when you're going to hopefully bloom. And I find gardening is quite, you have to manage your expectations. It's quite, things don't always work out. So you're going to make sure you're going to basically find new plans to have things work, or things don't work. But even on a balcony, you can bring together some lovely, lovely events and some joyful flowers and smells and things. And there's in the Chelsea, they do have balcony areas now.
Do they?
Yeah, there's basically, they have like 4 foot by 3 foot, and then they would suggest what you would put in there. But how lovely is that? It's not judging anybody.
It's just so uplifting, isn't it, to have the beauty of nature in your environment, whatever type of environment that might be. Have you been to Chelsea? I've never been.
No,
so we're talking about the Chelsea Flower Show.
Oh, yeah. No, I've been to Chelsea. Actually, we should go.
Well, we will definitely have to go to Chelsea Flower Show at some point together. I'm 100% up for that. Yeah. But when you were coming onto your garden as well, it was making me think how much we appreciated having a garden during lockdown, for example.
Oh, yeah.
It became a real sort of multifunctional space. We were quite lucky we'd put in a vegetable patch because the year before lockdown. So that was really nice as well, planting up the vegetables again with the boys. Was really lovely. So then obviously you've got the flowers that are very uplifting to watch, and then all the insects as well. We had the badminton was going, and it would always have to be barefoot and just going for it. And it was that appreciation of we're in, but we can be out. And again, I realize not everyone has that luxury, but if you do have that luxury, it's sort of making the full use of it.
It should be mandatory for have a little bit of an outside, if you can, like houses, and some houses are built and everything, and the garden is just like a 6x6. But even that you can do something with. But it's just, and now I even know there's where we are in a housing estate. they don't build houses with this larger garden anymore.
No, they're small. Even really big houses, they have
the
tiny
bigger
gardens,
houses,
don't
obviously
they?
the footprint is where they make the money, but what goes first is the space outside, which I think it should be the other way around really sometimes, but then people want so many bedrooms and bits and pieces, but they're really, where the other house has been built here, the gardening allowance has been halved, so the priority's been lost a bit, and that's obviously financial, but I think David Attenborough and everybody, they know what they're talking about, and people are aware of it now. So
yeah, I think if people see the benefits to their well-being, as you said, then that we're not in Scandinavia, for example, where it is well respected that you need access. I think it's even built into their sort of societies. They need access to nature. And they need to make that as easy as possible for people. I think even in the UK, so we're in a town, you know, there are parks, there are woods that, you know, even if they're a short bus journey or, a short walk away, that there is access to nature if you know to look for it.
Yeah, and it's not always this is why I was saying about people doing courses and being wellness, having packages of things that are quite obvious. Sometimes people have to be pushed into that one as well. You know, people just not pill popping, because I think people need medication sometimes, but it should go alongside it. It should be
it's complementary, isn't it?
Complementary, that's it. Yeah. So
in fact, with doing EFT, I went to the Complementary Medical Association conference last year because I'm a member, and I actually saw a talk by, in fact, I've got the book here, by Olga and Gary Evans, who started the the Forest Bathing Institute, and they've done this wonderful book that I highly recommend. It's full of interesting information about forest bathing. It's all about that sort of maintaining our wellness, improving our wellness where we can ourselves, and then, you know, if something comes about that is a chronic illness, a chronic situation, then, you know, the medical teams can of course help with that, but there's a way that they can work together.
Oh yes, definitely. And what works for some person doesn't work for another person, you know what I mean? So it could be you need to go for a swim or something like that that chills you out or whatever, or that just, with me, I like just being outside and digging and walking. But then, and also I think if you look after yourself, that, you know, you've got strength to look after other people. And that really helps, other people that maybe can't get outside, or just your attitude is better. Your positive attitude, I found, or my positive attitude helps other people. And then sometimes they'll come for a walk and talk with me, and it's just, we have a networking group here, and it was just basically women and their dogs. I don't have a dog, but I used to borrow one from my lovely friend, and she used to bring her mother-in-law's dog, and it wasn't mandatory, but we'd just go for a walk for about 45 minutes outside, and we're all business women, but then we'd talk about usually anything but business. You know, we'd just be talking, oh my gosh, the trees are late coming out, and what's happening, and there's a swan over there, and that was great. And then we'd have a coffee at the end of it, and then realize that we'd really bonded. And then we hadn't always talked about, what's your latest offer in business or anything like that. We're just really supportive feeling, and then we would do that just once a month. That just walking with like-minded women, and people would say, oh, we can just go for a coffee, but no, we need the walk to get out there. That just releases part of your brain. And then you look at the dogs just getting in the mud, and you have a giggle, and you're trying to get them out the water. And it's just, it really, if you're having a busy or intense things to do, it really just clicks you out of that mindset. There's other things happening in the world. And then you can feel, I've always felt refreshed to sort of tackle other things after that.
Yeah,
fantastic. Borrow a dog and get out. There is positivity in the world. There are people that realize that, this is just not a commodity. We need to look after the planet and look after ourselves. It's hopefully it'll keep growing, that attitude.
I believe there's also like a chemical benefit to forest bathing. Phytoncides. Apparently, in amongst the trees, they give off these chemicals. It can actually boost your immune system.
It's a protective space. I think it goes back to being primeval. If you were more protected, you weren't. If you're a sole traveler and you're out in the wilds and the open fields, you're very vulnerable. But if in the woodland, if in the woods, you've got cover, you've got places to hide, you feel more protected in a forest situation as a person, as an animal as well. And then also, I love it. Trees talk to each other; they look after each other through all the fungus through the soil. So it works in the root systems. If one tree in there, and they even look after different species, but species stick together apparently. If there's one tree that's ailing, some trees can send nutrients through the roots to dump and help feed a tree that's ailing. That is a fact. I know it sounds a bit cuckoo and everything, but I love it. So they've got their own structure and they're looking after each other. So obviously, if we're going through that situation and it's a protective situation and you feel as though what's around you is protecting each other, you're going to get a boost. It's I think your perception, people's perception, have shut down a lot. But if you give yourself time to feel what's around and be, that's why they call it bathing, isn't it? You have to immerse yourself. You've got to give yourself time. So. But
yeah, well, I think, as we've said, it's sort of putting a name to things that people used to do a lot more. I think there are sort of certain principles that they put in place as part of forest bathing. And it is things like, taking those deep breaths. So you're taking in more of those chemicals, but you're also letting your nervous system relax. There is turn off your mobile phones. That's not, not the time for multitasking. I think they even say, sort of avoid running after a dog or it's all about that slowing down, that mindfulness, that giving yourself that space to be fully aware of what's going on all around you, letting all your senses get involved in it.
It's to let things in, like I say, and then let things out from yourself. That's why I find this very creative. I find ideas just come up, and that's why I carry a notebook around or whatever, because to be open, that's where part of it is, to be open to the world. And then but if you can't be open to the world, if you're just like listening to something that you listen to every day, you need to it's always different. In the woodlands there's always different smells and sounds, different types of the year. It's a different feel. The forest sounds different in the winter. It's more echoey and colder, obviously, because the trees are bare, where it's all muffled and softer and more cover in the summer. So you just feel
of course.
It's all different. So that's why it's lovely to you do the same walk, but it's always changing and it's always wonderful. I think that's why people love to the sea. If you go for a sea walk, obviously the oxygen's amazing, but then it's always different.
Yes.
So
I get the same from the forest.
And then you notice things changing, when leaves are coming through and when they're not, and the colors, the
bluebells and
the first buds on a tree, the flush is like acid green, and then it calms itself down. And I love autumn, just absolutely love all the colors. A little bit of red happening there, but really appreciate all the autumn colors and everything. But that sort of seasonal rhythm, and that's in tune with your body as well, because you have that's what people get, is that SAD syndrome, where you don't get the light.
Seasonal affective disorder, of course.
You don't get the light. So by the time you get to January, you're just desperate to get out. But if you're in a city situation, it's just literally because you've got dark buildings around you. But sometimes you're going to need to, in January, just go out where it's a very open event and you get more daylight. It's really basic, really. But
and there you go. You just need the right clothing on, and actually there's no season that will
sometimes
completely stop you, is there?
I grew up in Cumbria, so honestly, it's tropical down here. It really is.
So we'll see you wandering through a park in London in your bare feet. And
I used to do lots of, with my photo shoots, I work outside a lot and locations, and there's Highgate Woods we used to use a lot, and I've got some great shots of when the trees are turning, and did some lovely imagery there and everything. So I'm quite aware of the seasons and the light and how that works and how to use it. And I love like golden hour, that last bit when the sun's setting and it's coming through. And that's a lovely time to go for a walk, because you feel like energized. You're getting the last rays of the sunshine, and it really does give you, like, you feel as though it's going to be dark soon. So you sort of, I don't know, I get a real buzz off that, the golden hour, when you're getting the last rays and you're enjoying the last few scraps of lovely light. So just, everybody's different.
Yeah. So do you think maybe that appreciation of nature and of light and capturing that in a way may have been where, or possibly the start of where your
Yeah.
photography interest
Yeah.
came from?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Well, I'm thrilled to say I have Annie doing a shoot with me in a few weeks' time for my business. And so would you like to tell us a little bit more about the photography offers that you've got on at the moment?
I'm a lifestyle branding, beauty, and portrait photographer. I think the best thing is to have a look at connect with me on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, okay,
And then also
fantastic.
have a look at my website.
So I'll make sure that those links are in the show notes. So if
Yeah.
people want to have a little look
Yeah.
at what else Annie does.
I'm always up for a little chat. Some people want to do a photo shoot, but they're not sure what they want to do. So I like have a little half-hour consultation, no obligation. See what you want, see what we can do together.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Annie. I mean, literally, I think the two of us could carry on chatting about
It's been joyous.
anything related to forest bathing for quite a while. And I'm sure I'll be lending you the book and hopefully popping down to the Chelsea Flower Show at some point. But thank you for today, and I'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you. It's been brilliant. Thanks so much. Bye for now.
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to go and put my shoes on, or rather take them off, and get outside right now. What I love about this conversation is that Annie captures something really important. Forest bathing isn't a technique to perfect or practice to add to an already packed schedule. It's something we already know how to do. We just got busy and stopped. Whether it's a walk in the woods, bare feet on wet grass, hands in the soil, or even just 10 minutes on a bench outside with a sandwich, it all counts. It's all bringing you back to something. The bit that stayed with me was Annie's point about change of state. We might reach for a drink at the end of the day to signal to our brains that we've finished. But going outside, even briefly, even in the rain, does the same thing. And then some. And the fact that the trees are quietly doing something similar, sending nutrients to each other through their roots, looking after ones that are struggling. There's something in that feels like a very good reminder. Annie is actually a lifestyle branding and portrait photographer based in Warwickshire. And if you'd like to see her beautiful work or find out about her no obligation consultation, there's links to her website and LinkedIn in the show notes. And details of the book I mentioned by the Forest Bathing Institute is also in the show notes if you want to explore further. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, you might not need a forest, you just need to go outside.